This is low-light trivia. Science. 54 questions. There's no timer and nothing to keep up with. Each question gets a pause, then the answer, then a little more about it. If you fall asleep before the end, that's the idea. If you'd like more of these, subscribing helps. That's the last thing I'll ask of you tonight. This program is read by a synthetic, AI-generated voice. Every answer comes from a cited source, checked by a person. Let's begin. During digestion, proteins are broken down into which smaller components? A. Simple sugars. B. Amino acids. C. Glycerol. D. Fatty acids. The answer is amino acids. Digestion breaks large nutrient molecules into pieces small enough for the body to absorb and use. Proteins are broken into amino acids, fats into fatty acids and glycerol, and carbohydrates into simple sugars. These smaller units then pass through the intestinal lining into the bloodstream to support energy production, growth, and tissue repair. If a tank, rail tank car, or highway tank carrying a toxic substance like London Purple catches fire, how far should the surrounding area be isolated and evacuated? A. 400 meters. B. 100 meters. C. 800 meters. D. 200 meters. The answer is 800 meters. A vehicle or rail tank on fire poses a much greater danger than a simple spill, since the container itself may rupture or explode from heat buildup. Emergency response guidance, therefore, calls for a far larger isolation and evacuation radius in this scenario than for an ordinary leak of the same substance. What nickname was given to the international prototype of the kilogram? A. Big Blue. B. The Golden Standard. C. Le Grand K. D. The Paris Mass. The answer is Le Grand K. The international prototype of the kilogram earned the affectionate nickname Le Grand K, meaning the Big K, despite being roughly the size of a golf ball. It was kept under triple lock near Paris, and every official mass measurement on the planet ultimately traced back to comparisons with this one small cylinder. What determines which element a particular atom belongs to? A. The number of protons in its nucleus. B. The number of neutrons in its nucleus. C. The total atomic mass of the atom. D. The number of electrons surrounding it. The answer is the number of protons in its nucleus. Every atom of a given element has the same number of protons, and this value is fixed for that element. Changing the proton count actually changes what element the atom is. Neutrons and electrons can vary between atoms of the same element, but the proton count never does, which is why it defines elemental identity. Where does the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide take place in the lungs? A. The trachea. B. The alveoli. C. The bronchial tubes. D. The pulmonary artery. The answer is the alveoli. These tiny air sacs are surrounded by capillaries, allowing oxygen from inhaled air to pass into the blood, while carbon dioxide waste moves in the opposite direction, out of the blood and into the sacs to be exhaled. This exchange depends on the thin walls separating the air sacs from the surrounding blood vessels. The name oxygen comes from a Greek phrase meaning what? A. Life-giving. B. Air-breathing. C. Acid-forming. D. Fire-feeding. The answer is acid-forming. The name reflects an early and mistaken theory, proposed by Antoine Lavoisier, that this gas was the essential ingredient in all acids. Although later chemistry showed this was not universally true, since many acids contain no oxygen at all, the Greek-derived name stuck and remains in use today across all languages descended from that naming tradition. According to quantum theory, what is a single quantum of electromagnetic radiation or light called? A. A proton. B. A neutrino. C. A boson. D. A photon. The answer is a photon. A quantum is the smallest discrete unit of a natural phenomenon within a bound system, and light's smallest unit is the photon. This idea helped explain puzzling phenomena like the photoelectric effect, where light striking certain materials causes them to emit electrons only at specific wavelengths. What makes plasma different from the other three states of matter? A. It contains free electrons no longer bound to nuclei. B. It always exists at room temperature. C. It has a fixed molecular shape. D. It cannot conduct electricity. The answer is, it contains free electrons no longer bound to nuclei. In solids, liquids, and gases, electrons stay close to their atomic nuclei. In plasma, some electrons break free, leaving behind positively charged ions. This mix of free electrons and ions is what gives plasma its unique electrical and magnetic behavior, distinguishing it fundamentally from the other familiar states of matter. How many types of nitrogen bases make up the nucleotides in a DNA strand? A. 4. B. 20. C. 6. D. 2. The answer is 4. Each nucleotide building block contains a phosphate group, a sugar group, and one nitrogen base. There are only 4 kinds of these bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And the specific order in which they appear along a DNA strand is what encodes the biological instructions for building and running an organism. What is the name given to the 5th state of matter discovered in 1995? A. Superfluid helium. B. Quark-gluon plasma. C. Bose-Einstein condensate. D. Degenerate matter. The answer is Bose-Einstein condensate. This state forms when particles are cooled to near absolute zero, causing them to merge into a single quantum object that behaves like a wave rather than as separate particles. It joins solid, liquid, gas, and plasma as a recognized state of matter, and it is now studied both on Earth and aboard the International Space Station. What happens to the diaphragm when a person breathes in? A. It expands sideways only. B. It stops moving entirely. C. It contracts and moves downward. D. It relaxes and moves upward. The answer is, it contracts and moves downward. This downward movement enlarges the chest cavity, giving the lungs room to expand and draw in air. Muscles between the ribs assist by pulling the rib cage upward and outward at the same time. During exhalation, the process reverses as the diaphragm relaxes, shrinking the chest cavity and pushing air back out through the windpipe. In what year did Francis Crick and James Watson discover DNA? A. 1944. B. 1962. C. 1931. D. 1953. The answer is 1953. The discovery of DNA's structure opened a new phase in the study of evolution by revealing the molecular basis for how traits are inherited and how variation arises through mutations. This finding connected earlier ideas about genes as units of heredity to a concrete chemical explanation involving sequences of bases along a molecular backbone. Which combination of sex chromosomes does a female have? A. 2 X chromosomes. B. 1 X chromosome only. C. 2 Y chromosomes. D. 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. The answer is 2 X chromosomes. Sex is determined by the 23rd chromosome pair, with females carrying 2 X chromosomes and males carrying 1 X and 1 Y. Each daughter receives an X from both parents, while each son receives an X from the mother and a Y from the father, explaining the inheritance pattern behind biological sex. Which muscle is described as the main one used for breathing? A. The pharynx muscles. B. The intercostal muscles. C. The diaphragm. D. The abdominal muscles. The answer is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle beneath the lungs that separates the chest cavity from the abdominal cavity. Its contraction creates the vacuum that draws air into the lungs, making it the primary driver of breathing, while other muscles like the intercostals and abdominals assist mainly during physical activity or fast breathing. How many hollow chambers does the human heart have? A. 3. B. 2. C. 4. D. 6. The answer is 4. The heart is divided into 4 hollow chambers, 2 upper and 2 lower, each surrounded by muscle and tissue. Valves between them keep blood moving in one direction rather than flowing backward, which is essential for efficient circulation through the lungs and the rest of the body. What key feature distinguishes plasma from the other 3 states of matter? A. Its electrons separate from atoms and become free. B. Its particles have no mass. C. It is always a solid at room temperature. D. It cannot exist at any temperature. The answer is, its electrons separate from atoms and become free. In solids, liquids, and gases, electrons stay bound close to their atomic nuclei. Plasma is unique because some electrons break free, leaving behind positively charged ions. This mix of free electrons and ions is what allows plasma to conduct electricity and behave in complex, wave-forming ways, unlike ordinary gas. Which combination of sex chromosomes is described as belonging to a male? A. 1X and 1Y chromosome. B. 2Y chromosomes. C. 2X chromosomes. D. 1X and 2Y chromosomes. The answer is 1X and 1Y chromosome. Sex chromosomes form the 23rd pair and determine biological sex. A son receives an X chromosome from his mother and a Y chromosome from his father, giving him one of each, while a daughter receives an X chromosome from each parent, giving her 2 X chromosomes. By mass, iron ranks as which most abundant element in the Earth's crust? A. Sixth. B. Fourth. C. Second. D. Eighth. The answer is fourth. Iron's abundance in the crust reflects its role throughout the planet's structure, since the core itself is thought to be composed largely of iron alloyed with nickel and sulfur. This widespread distribution, combined with common ores like hematite and magnetite, is part of why iron became central to human technology. What distinction did Marie Curie achieve after continuing her research following her husband's death? A. First person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences alone. B. First woman to direct a chemistry laboratory. C. First person ever awarded 2 Nobel Prizes. D. First female university professor in France. The answer is first person ever awarded 2 Nobel Prizes. After being widowed in 1906, Marie Curie continued the scientific work she had shared with her husband Pierre. She went on to win a second Nobel Prize in chemistry, having already shared the physics prize with Pierre in 1903. This made her the first person, of any gender, to receive 2 separate Nobel Prizes. Since what year has the Cold Atom Laboratory aboard the International Space Station been producing Bose-Einstein condensates almost daily? A. 2010. B. 1995. C. 2020. D. 2018. The answer is 2018. The Cold Atom Laboratory aboard the International Space Station has been generating Bose-Einstein condensates almost daily since 2018. The microgravity environment lets these ultra-cold atom clouds float freely, extending the time researchers have to observe their quantum wave behavior compared to similar experiments conducted under Earth's gravity. Which part of the small intestine comes first, right after the stomach? A. The duodenum. B. The cecum. C. The ileum. D. The jejunum. The answer is the duodenum. The small intestine is divided into 3 sections in order. Food leaves the stomach and enters the duodenum first, then passes through the jejunum in the middle, before reaching the ileum at the end. Each section plays a distinct role in digesting and absorbing nutrients before waste moves onward to the large intestine. What does the epiglottis do during swallowing? A. It contracts to push food into the stomach. B. It folds over the windpipe to prevent choking. C. It absorbs water from swallowed food. D. It relaxes to let food enter the esophagus. The answer is, it folds over the windpipe to prevent choking. Swallowing involves a coordinated set of movements to protect the airway. As food moves from the mouth toward the esophagus, the epiglottis flips down over the trachea, ensuring that food travels toward the stomach rather than into the lungs, after which the automatic muscular process of peristalsis takes over. Which layer of heart tissue is the thick middle layer of muscle that contracts to pump blood? A. Pericardium. B. Endocardium. C. Myocardium. D. Septum. The answer is myocardium. The myocardium is the muscular layer responsible for the heart's contractions, allowing chambers to squeeze and relax in order to push blood through the body. It sits between the thin inner lining called the endocardium and the protective outer sac called the pericardium. Which element is the second most abundant in the universe, right after hydrogen? A. Helium. B. Oxygen. C. Nitrogen. D. Carbon. The answer is helium. Helium forms in vast quantities inside stars through nuclear fusion, making it enormously common across the cosmos, even though it is scarce in Earth's atmosphere. Being extremely light, most helium that reaches the surface eventually drifts upward and escapes into space, keeping its concentration here far lower than its universal abundance would suggest. Where was helium first detected, long before it was ever found on Earth? A. In volcanic gases from Vesuvius. B. In the Sun's corona. C. In natural gas deposits. D. In Earth's atmosphere. The answer is in the Sun's corona. Helium was identified through spectral lines in sunlight decades before anyone isolated it in a laboratory. This unusual order of discovery, in space before on Earth, is why the element is named after the Greek word for sun, rather than after a place or a scientist, as many other elements are. How did the radioactivity from argon-39 in underground argon drawn from a carbon dioxide gas plant in Cortez, Colorado, compare to that found in ordinary atmospheric argon? A. It was roughly 12% of the atmospheric level. B. It was less than 0.65% of the atmospheric level. C. It was about half the atmospheric level. D. It was nearly identical to the atmospheric level. The answer is less than 0.65%. Atmospheric argon constantly picks up radioactive argon-39 from cosmic ray interactions high in the sky, which creates unwanted background noise in sensitive detectors. Argon trapped underground for a long time is shielded from those cosmic rays, so it retains dramatically less of this radioactive isotope, making it far more useful as a quiet target material for dark matter searches. Marie Curie's 1911 Nobel Prize in Chemistry recognized her work on which two elements? A. Radon and actinium. B. Helium and radium. C. Uranium and thorium. D. Radium and polonium. The answer is radium and polonium. Her prize citation praised the discovery of these two radioactive elements and the detailed study of radium's properties and compounds. Polonium was named after her native Poland, while radium's intense radioactivity made it central to later research in physics and medicine. The abbreviation SI comes from a phrase in which language? A. Spanish. B. German. C. Latin. D. French. The answer is French. The letters SI stand for a French phrase meaning the International System of Units. Even though English became the dominant language of science over the 20th century, the abbreviation kept its French origin, a small reminder that the modern metric system grew out of 18th and 19th century French scientific and governmental reforms to standardize measurement. For more than a century, the kilogram was defined as the mass of a small cylinder made from which two metals: A. Gold and silver. B. Platinum and iridium. C. Tungsten and steel. D. Copper and nickel. The answer is platinum and iridium. The original kilogram standard, nicknamed Le Grand K, was a small polished cylinder cast in 1879. For well over 100 years, every mass measurement on Earth, from pounds to metric tons, traced back to this single physical object kept under triple lock near Paris, until scientists replaced it with a definition based on a constant of nature. Who first published an account of discovering oxygen, having produced it by focusing sunlight onto mercuric oxide? A. Carl Wilhelm Scheele. B. Cornelius Drebbel. C. Joseph Priestley. D. Antoine Lavoisier. The answer is Joseph Priestley. Priestley made the gas in 1774 by focusing sunlight onto mercuric oxide, and he noticed that a candle burned more brightly in it. Carl Wilhelm Scheele had actually produced the gas earlier, in 1771, but his account was not published until several years later, so Priestley received credit for the first publication. Who is credited with discovering DNA in 1953? A. Charles Darwin and Gregor Mendel. B. Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck and Erasmus Darwin. C. Francis Crick and James Watson. D. Gregor Mendel and Erasmus Darwin. The answer is Francis Crick and James Watson. Their discovery revealed that DNA carries the genetic instructions for building and running every known living organism. This finding pushed the study of evolution down to its most basic chemical level, showing that changes in the sequence of DNA bases are what ultimately produce new traits and, over time, new species. What term describes atoms of the same element that contain different numbers of neutrons? A. Isotopes. B. Allotropes. C. Isomers. D. Ions. The answer is isotopes. Because the number of neutrons can vary, while the number of protons stays fixed for a given element, atoms of that element can have different atomic mass numbers. This variation is why a periodic table mass value is usually a weighted average across several naturally occurring versions of the same element, rather than a single fixed number. What is the internal wall of tissue called that separates the right and left sides of the heart? A. Septum. B. Pericardium. C. Endocardium. D. Myocardium. The answer is septum. The septum is the internal wall that keeps oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood from mixing between the heart's two sides. This separation allows the right side to send blood to the lungs, while the left side sends freshly oxygenated blood to the rest of the body, keeping circulation efficient. During sexual reproduction, from which parent do offspring inherit all of their mitochondrial DNA? A. The male parent only. B. The female parent only. C. Equally from both parents. D. Whichever parent contributes more nuclear DNA. The answer is the female parent only. Mitochondria are structures that generate energy for the cell, and they carry their own small set of DNA, separate from the nucleus. Egg cells retain their mitochondria during fertilization, while sperm cells do not. So offspring end up with mitochondrial DNA that traces back exclusively through the maternal line, generation after generation. London purple, once used as an insecticide, is described as a solid mixture of which four substances? A. Arsenic trioxide, copper acetate, lime and quicklime. B. Arsenic trioxide, aniline, calcium oxide and lead oxide. C. Arsenic trioxide, aniline, lime, and ferrous oxide. D. Sulfuric acid, aniline, lime, and ferrous oxide. The answer is arsenic trioxide, aniline, lime, and ferrous oxide. London purple was a 19th century arsenical insecticide made by combining arsenic trioxide with aniline dye waste, lime, and ferrous oxide. It was insoluble in water and highly toxic if inhaled or swallowed, which eventually led to it being replaced by other pesticides such as Paris green. How many chromosomes do humans typically have, arranged in how many pairs? A. 46 chromosomes in 23 pairs. B. 44 chromosomes in 22 pairs. C. 42 chromosomes in 21 pairs. D. 48 chromosomes in 24 pairs. The answer is 46 chromosomes in 23 pairs. Chromosomes package DNA into discrete units, and children inherit one chromosome from each pair from their mother and the other from their father. Of the 23 pairs, 22 are called autosomes, while the 23rd pair consists of the sex chromosomes, which determine whether a person is born male or female. Which type of wave penetrates clouds, dust, smoke, snow, and rain, making it ideal for communication satellites? A. Microwaves. B. X-rays. C. Ultraviolet waves. D. Infrared waves. The answer is microwaves. Microwaves pass through atmospheric obstructions that block many other wavelengths, which is why they are well suited for satellite communication links that must stay reliable in poor weather. Their penetrating ability also makes them useful in active and passive instruments that scientists use to study Earth's surface and the night sky. Since 2018, Bose-Einstein condensates have been produced almost daily aboard the International Space Station using which facility? A. Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. B. Cold Atom Laboratory. C. Destiny Laboratory Module. D. Columbus Research Module. The answer is Cold Atom Laboratory. Microgravity lets these condensates float freely, which extends how long scientists can observe them compared to experiments confined to Earth's surface. This extra observation time helps researchers study the quantum, wave-like behavior of matter in ways that ground-based labs cannot easily replicate. Which pair of chromosomes determines whether a person is born male or female? A. The first pair, called the master chromosomes. B. The 22nd pair, called the terminal chromosomes. C. The 10th pair, called the developmental chromosomes. D. The 23rd pair, called the sex chromosomes. The answer is the 23rd pair, called the sex chromosomes. Of the 23 chromosome pairs a person inherits, 22 are numbered autosomes, shared in the same form between males and females. The remaining pair, the sex chromosomes, differs by sex. A female inherits an X from each parent, while a male inherits an X from his mother and a Y from his father, and this combination determines sex. How many chromosomes do dogs have? A. 24, B. 46, C. 64, D. 78. The answer is 78. Dogs carry 78 chromosomes, far more than the 46 found in humans. Chromosome number does not correlate with an organism's complexity or intelligence. It simply reflects how that species' DNA happens to be organized into segments. Rice plants, by comparison, have only 24 chromosomes despite being a complex living organism in their own right. Gold is generally unreactive, but it will dissolve in which mixture of acids? A. Sulfuric acid alone. B. Aqua regia. C. Dilute nitric acid. D. Hydrofluoric acid. The answer is aqua regia. Gold resists most chemical attack, which is part of why it stays bright for millennia in jewelry and artifacts. Aqua regia, a blend of nitric and hydrochloric acids, works because the two acids together create conditions neither can achieve alone, breaking down gold's usual resistance to oxidation and allowing it to form soluble compounds. Approximately how many base pairs make up the human genome? A. 300 billion. B. 300 million. C. 3 billion. D. 30 billion. The answer is 3 billion. The human genome is built from roughly 3 billion base pairs, each formed by a matched set of the 4 chemical bases. Together, these pairs spell out the complete set of instructions needed to build and maintain a human body, from directing which genes are active to shaping the traits passed between generations. Which type of electromagnetic wave is mostly blocked by Earth's atmosphere, protecting the surface from harmful rays? A. Radio waves. B. Microwaves. C. X-rays. D. Reflected near-infrared waves. The answer is X-rays. X-rays carry very high energy and would be harmful to living things if they reach the ground in large amounts. The atmosphere shields the surface from most of this radiation, which is why scientists rely on satellites positioned above the atmosphere to observe X-ray emissions coming from stars, galaxies, and other energetic cosmic sources. In an example used to illustrate how physical quantities are expressed, what height is given for the Washington Monument? A. 150 meters. B. 100 meters. C. 200 meters. D. 169 meters. The answer is 169 meters. This example illustrates how a physical quantity is expressed as the product of a number and a unit, with the number serving as the numerical value. The monument's height, when expressed in meters, yields a numerical value of 169, showing how the same physical height would carry a different number if expressed in another unit, such as feet. Whose experiment with uranium and a photographic plate in 1896 led to the discovery of radioactivity? A. Ernest Rutherford. B. Henri Becquerel. C. Marie Curie. D. Wilhelm Röntgen. The answer is Henri Becquerel. Becquerel left a uranium sample resting on an unexposed photographic plate and found the plate had clouded over, showing that the uranium was emitting invisible rays capable of affecting film without any external light source. This chance observation opened an entirely new field of physics that later researchers, including Marie Curie, would go on to name and explore further. Above roughly what temperature are most high-temperature plasmas found, according to the described threshold? A. 100,000 degrees Fahrenheit. B. 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. C. 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. D. 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The answer is 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Most plasma found throughout the universe falls into this high-temperature category, where the heat is so extreme that atoms become fully ionized, losing all their electrons. This contrasts with low-temperature plasmas, which are only partially ionized and can exist at temperatures as mild as room temperature. What does the name hydrogen mean based on its Greek roots? A. Firemaker. B. Light bearer. C. Air breather. D. Water forming. The answer is water forming. The name hydrogen combines Greek words meaning water and forming, reflecting the discovery that burning this gas produces water. Antoine Lavoisier gave the element this name after Henry Cavendish showed that hydrogen, when ignited in the presence of oxygen, combines to form water, ending centuries of belief that water was itself an elemental substance rather than a compound of two lighter gases. How many nations voted in November 2018 to redefine the kilogram using the Planck constant? A. 12. B. 35. C. 90. D. 60. The answer is 60. This international vote ended the kilogram's dependence on a single physical artifact and tied it instead to an unchanging property of nature. The shift solved a long-standing problem where the mass of reference cylinders could drift slightly over time, and where scaling measurements down to milligrams introduced growing uncertainty. If all the DNA from a single human cell were stretched out end to end, how long would the resulting strand be? A. 6 feet. B. 10 feet. C. 3 feet. D. 1 foot. The answer is 6 feet. This striking comparison highlights how densely DNA must be packed to fit inside a cell's nucleus, a structure so tiny it requires a specialized microscope to see. The 6-foot strand, made up of a 6 billion letter code, is coiled and folded through structural proteins so tightly that it occupies an almost unimaginably small space. Sodium metal was first isolated in 1807 by exposing caustic soda to an electric current. Who carried out this experiment at the Royal Institution in London? A. Louis-Joseph Gay-Lussac. B. Humphrey Davy. C. Louis-Jacques Thénard. D. John Dalton. The answer is Humphrey Davy. Davy had already isolated potassium using electrolysis, but sodium required a stronger current to separate from its compound, caustic soda. This method, passing electricity through a molten or dissolved substance to free the metal within, became a defining technique of early 19th century chemistry and led to the discovery of several other reactive metals around the same period. About how many pairs of chromosomes does the complete human genome contain? A. 20 pairs. B. 30 pairs. C. 25 pairs. D. 23 pairs. The answer is 23 pairs. The human genome is organized into 23 pairs of chromosomes, holding roughly 3 billion bases and about 20,000 genes. This packaging allows an enormous amount of biological instruction to fit within the nucleus of nearly every cell, while still allowing the DNA to unwind for copying or protein production when needed. Which two physicists created the first Bose-Einstein condensate using a gas of rubidium atoms? A. Eric Cornell and Carl Wyman. B. Satyendra Nath Bose and Albert Einstein. C. Christina Koch and Wolfgang Ketterle. D. Wolfgang Ketterle and Albert Einstein. The answer is Eric Cornell and Carl Wyman. Eric Cornell, working at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and Carl Wyman, at the University of Colorado at Boulder, produced the first Bose-Einstein condensate using rubidium atoms. Shortly afterward, Wolfgang Ketterle at MIT created one using sodium atoms, and together these achievements marked the confirmed discovery of the fifth state of matter, decades after Bose and Einstein had theorized it. In the magnesium example used to illustrate atomic structure, how many protons does every magnesium atom contain? A. 12, B. 24, C. 10, D. 14. The answer is 12. The atomic number sits at the heart of an element's identity because it counts the protons in the nucleus, and this number never changes for a given element. Magnesium always carries 12 protons. Altering that count would turn it into a different element entirely, since protons define which element an atom actually is. Where has the Cold Atom Laboratory been producing Bose-Einstein condensates almost daily since 2018? A. Aboard the Hubble Space Telescope. B. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. C. Aboard the International Space Station. D. At the National Institute of Standards and Technology. The answer is aboard the International Space Station. Producing condensates in orbit takes advantage of microgravity, which lets the ultra-cold atoms float freely instead of falling under gravity as they would in a ground-based lab. This extends how long scientists can observe them, giving researchers more time to study their wave-like quantum behavior before the condensate breaks apart. That's all of them. Sleep well.